If I could ask everybody to take their seats, we're ready to begin. I'd like to remind everyone that we audio and video record our meetings. So I ask the board members if you would kindly push your microphone button when you have something to say on the record and then push it again to disconnect after. Also, for those board members that are calling in, if you would kindly mute your phone until you have something to say so we don't get the feedback. And with that, I will turn it over to Director McGallis, our finance chair.
Thank you, Audrey. The first item on the agenda is the roll call. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Sure. Director Colson? Director Groven?
Here.
Director Holt? Here. Director Cotel?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Melvin?
Here.
Director Troiani?
Here.
Director McGallis?
Here.
We have a quorum of 8 present with no absent. If the record would also show that Directors Durante, Frega, Fuentes, Higgins. Director Ross, you're on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Dr. Saga, you're on the phone?
I am.
And Chairman Dillard are all also present in one way or another.
Okay, thank you. Second item is the approval of minutes from the meeting held May 16, 2019. Are there any questions or comments? Not, could we have a motion? Motion by Director Lewis, second by Director Melvin. Roll call.
Director Colson? Yes. Director Groven?
Yes.
Director Holt? Aye. Director Cotel?
Aye.
Director Lewis?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Aye.
Director Troiani?
Aye.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Item 3A is a presentation of the monthly financial results for April of 2019. B.
One moment, please. It turns out the mouse is not working. Oh, you've got a new mouse. Sorry about that. Okay, we're good to go. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Morning.
Today I am presenting the year-to-date financial results through April. Last month, staff made a recommendation for substantial accordance with budget based on an improving trend in the service board financials. I'm pleased to report that with April, the results have continued to strengthen as we recover from the bad start in January due to the weather. Ridership and operating revenue are both still unfavorable to budget, but expense performance has been very good. Looking at system ridership in April, it was 0.8% lower than prior year and 1.2% lower than budget. Year-to-date ridership is now down 3.8% from 2018. Ridership has been down from prior year in each month, but has narrowed the gap to the DASH budget line since January. Looking back at the summary table, Metro had the least unfavorable performance and Pace Suburban Service had the largest shortfall through April. In total, the system is 5.5 million rides unfavorable to budget. That is slightly less than 3%, which is why the system total ridership variance is not highlighted in red. Looking at operating revenue, it has the turn has suffered as a result of the lower ridership and was 11.5 million or 3% unfavorable to budget. Contributing to the lower revenue is the service boards reflecting the 50% reduction in the assumed reduced fare reimbursement from the state. Now about half of the total revenue variance is attributable to that funding reduction. The rest is due to severe winter weather impacts early this year. Keep in mind that while we budgeted at the full amount, the $34 million for last year, we will not do so in 2020 because we do have a final state budget at this time.
Good.
PACE ADA's results have swung to 9.2% favorable to budget, highlighted in light blue due to the receipt of prior year Medicaid reimbursements in April. So this is a timing difference. The Medicaid reimbursements arrive at different times, and they could even be for prior years. Looking at the public funding section of the dashboard, that shows that the results are under budget through April due to unfavorable sales tax and the RET, or the real estate transfer tax results. March sales tax, however, is expected to be essentially at budget after significant shortfalls in January and February, so this area is also showing an improving trend. CTA's public funding was $10.6 million, or 4.2% unfavorable to budget, highlighted in red, due to weak real estate transfer tax results in the first 2 months of the year. But again, those tend to have a lag as closing agencies and title companies pre-buy real estate transfer stamps, load them onto their operations, and then apply them several months after the transaction has happened, and they file them at that point. So there could be a lag in that because it doesn't sync up with what we're hearing about the real estate market. And we obviously are dependent on large commercial sales at times that will put you and spike it at different times throughout the year. Looking at operating expenses, system-wide through April, they were $21.3 million, or 2.3% favorable to budget, with all three service boards and the ADA paratransfer reporting favorable results. Each of the service boards benefited from lower than budgeted diesel fuel prices. PACE's results were 4.8% favorable to budget, highlighted in light blue, due to favorable in all categories except overhead. PACE ADA's results were 8.4% favorable to budget due to favorability in all categories, especially the purchased transportation services, but again, that is due to the fewer rides that were provided. At the regional level, favorable expenses did not fully offset the unfavorable revenue and public funding, so it's producing a net result that was $3.4 million unfavorable to budget, but this is an improvement of $3.9 million from last month's results. ADA Paratransit recorded a net result favorable by more than 3%, driven again by strong expense performance. When you look at recovery ratios, through April, the recovery ratio of 47.8% is unfavorable to budget by 0.4 percentage points. This reflects continued improvement from the first quarter recovery ratio, which was 0.6% unfavorable. The fair recovery ratio of 34% and the all revenue recovery ratio of 40.2% were both about 1 point lower than prior year, again reflecting the weather-related ridership impact on fare revenue. In the right section, CTA reported an unfavorable result driven by the unfavorable fare revenue and the reduced fare funding. Metro, PACE, and ADA Paratransit reported favorable results, again due to good expense performance. So we'll continue to watch this, but it is trending in the right direction. And keep in mind that we don't even budget for a 50% recovery ratio until August of the year. So it is seasonal variations, and I'm looking at Director Lewis because I know you had a question on this. But it is seasonal variations throughout the year, and then we don't expect to achieve the 50% until August. And we do think we're on track to do that. We'll just continue to watch it. In summary, the service board's expense performance through April continued to be strong, helping to offset the effects of ridership and revenue losses. The regional recovery ratio has improved each month, and we expect again to reach the statutorily required 50% through the summer. That concludes my remarks, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Director Lewis.
I do have a question, being it's not about the recovery ratio. Has there been any study done in terms of whether there's a correlation between the price that we charge for fares and the ridership? Because ridership has been declining, and there's a reason I'm asking this question. Is there anything that we've seen where if we lower the fare or adjust the fare, it impacts ridership in a positive or negative way?
So working with the planning division and previously the performance management group, there have been a lot of elasticity studies showing direct correlations between fares and a number of things, fuel prices, ridership, and the impact. I don't have that information here. We can certainly share some of the later ones. I know Doug's done studies too on this. Do you want to comment further on that, or?
Work. And the service boards also have their own models to predict sort of what fare rates are and what ridership will be like. We can share information with you. I mean, there is a connection, but it's not just ridership is not just driven by fares.
And there's a reason I was asking that. I mean, there's some thinking that if you change the fare structure, it may impact the ridership, and I'm not sure that necessarily is always a one-for-one correlation. So if there's any background information, I'd be appreciative for some conversations that I've been involved in.
You know what I noticed, and looking at some of those studies after I first arrived here and over the years, is that it was never as detrimental as everyone predicted. I can say that. Like, you know, they would, you know, attribute X amount of ridership percentage decline directly related to a fare increase. And that was never achieved. I mean, not achieved, but that was never, it didn't result to be, because there's a lot of impact studies. I mean, our fares go up, and you can look at that, and it does vary by region, it varies by mode of travel, and it varies. And throughout the country, they've done a lot of studies on this. So we can share some information for you on what we've seen.
It was actually the opposite that I was looking at. If you reduce the fare by a little bit, will you increase ridership by a lot? That's really the slide that I was looking at. So if you have any information, I'd be interested. I don't want to take any more time.
It varies a lot by line, by region, all of that sort of stuff. We'll share with you what we have. I know what you're thinking about with some of the conversations that are happening in South Cook area right now, and there has been some analysis specifically on that in that corridor to look at what that ridership might be. I mean, but largely what drives ridership is the economy overall, and it's, you know, ridership plays, I mean, fares play a little bit on the edges, you know, in terms of tweaking that, but it's, and maybe fuel prices a little bit too, but largely it's the economy that drives ridership overall.
I think one of the things that is a positive part of the gas tax. The gas tax is going to increase the cost of fuel, and what we have always found is that when the cost of gasoline and fuel goes up, our ridership goes up substantially. I mean, it's just happens. So with the fact that the tax goes on, maybe people at that point will find it a lot more attractive to take public transit, because that's usually where we get our rides from, is when that occurs. Of course, the gas tax has a lot of other major benefits for this organization and beyond. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes, Director Higgins.
Within the ridership for PACE, that unfavorability to budget obviously exceeds the others, looks significantly. Is there anything within the PACE category in particular that's driving that? For example, is van pool down, express bus down? My sense is that probably those are such small percentages of the overall PACE operation, but any insight there?
We could look into it a little bit more, but it was pretty much across the board, and it was all weather related. You know, there's some corridors that are doing very well. You know, their rapid, their bus on shoulder programs and so forth, but it really was pretty much across the board, and it's just weather related. I think they take the biggest hit when it's weather related travel. But we'll see what else we have.
The genesis of my question is I'm wondering if whether you know, the van pool program is suffering disproportionately because of
Doug has
rideshare
some
and
additional.
hailing
Yeah,
services.
B was correct. PACE's three modes are fixed route, dial-a-ride, and van pool. All three are down roughly 8%. So as she said, it's broad-based. January really hurt them with the weather. But yeah, it's all three.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you very much, B. Next item is item 3B, which is presentation of the semi-annual project management oversight report.
So presenting will be our manager over the Project Management Oversight Program, and they work very collaboratively with the three service boards to report to you twice annually on the status of our RTA Act designated responsibilities on project management oversight over CTA, Metro, and PACE.
Thank you, B. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning.
Morning.
Today, I'm happy to present the current report on project management oversight. You received the PMO report as part of your board briefing a couple weeks ago, and it includes details for every project. The report was designed to make it straightforward for our board to easily see progress, issues, and risks for the transit capital projects in the region. The PMO program currently includes oversight of all state-funded transit projects regardless of budget and all other projects with budgets of $10 million or more regardless of funding source. Together, this set of projects for the current reporting period represents $5.7 billion. As you know, after nearly a decade without a State of Illinois capital program, transit in the RTA region will get a much-needed infusion from the Rebuild Illinois bill passed on June 1st, 2019 by the General Assembly. The RTA is looking forward to the implementation of this new state capital plan. Leanne will discuss this in more detail in her report. The state-funded projects presented in this report are part of the prior year's program. As a bit of a background, RTA implements the PMO program pursuant to Section 2.01B of the RTA Act. RTA is required to oversee the Service Board's capital program